Western Arnhem Plateau is vast, more than 32,000 square kilometres of sandstone country that sweeps to the horizon as far as the eye can see.
The plateau's a really rugged place and it's very hard to move around in. It's not a matter of getting in a four-wheel drive and driving there, you just can't.
Over millions of years, the wear of time has gouged deep gorges and occasional waterways that sustain life, even in the harshest dry season. Nowhere else in the Northern Territory has such a wide variety of plants and animals. This spectacular landscape also conceals a human richness seen by very few.
It's probably the most painted landscape in the world. People have been living here and painting in caves and rock shelters for, 40, 50,000 years.
That's how big this place is, the Arnhem Land Plateau. And there's a lot of art here, and I don't think that it's been discovered yet.
There's no way of knowing how many rock galleries like this exist among this maze of sandstone outcrops. This is very remote, inhospitable country. There are no major roads or large population centres. Among the sheer escarpments of breathtaking beauty, the plateau forms the headwaters of some of the largest river systems in the Northern Territory.
For most of that country, the only access is walking into it, which could be a week, 10 days, or a very expensive alternative, as we followed this morning, coming in by helicopter.
You can go to places in Kakadu and see art, but there's no roads up here. The only way you can get up here is either walk here or you come up in a helicopter. For us to come back here, especially myself, to bring my son here and my niece to show them the art, they take it in. Also to bring people here too, people that's never seen stuff like this before. And I think that's the special thing about it now, being able to come up here. It's so remote, and art's just everywhere. Here's the main camping area. This place
This
here.
is the main camp place, isn't it?
Yeah.
Look at this, the sort of polish on that rock over there, where people have been grinding food and doing stuff for a very, very long time. Up above your head, Fred, there's a really beautiful fish. Absolutely stunning, isn't it? It's really beautifully drawn with fine cross-hatching and everything.
You can see how their head's been broken back too, so he's all ready to get chucked on the fire.
One of the more accessible rock galleries is about 60 kilometres east of Jabiru. Here, under a rock ledge, is a giant painting of ill-fated explorer Ludwig Leichhardt on horseback. Some of this art has been dated to be as old as 50,000 years of age. But what's truly astounding is what we've been able to accurately glean about the age of some of the more recent paintings. Those depicting Ludwig Leichhardt, for example, we know must date from late 1845. And we know that because that's when the explorer passed this way.
Where we are here this morning's a really special place because here we've got an image that records the passing of Leichhardt and his party close to this spot late in the dry season in 1845.
And the explorer and his party, after 15 months of trekking, were exhausted and near starving.
By this stage of their travels, they were pretty much living on bush tucker. From his journal, their travels through what's now Kakadu, they were talking to Aboriginal people on a daily basis, and in a lot of cases the Aboriginal people were feeding them.
These dramatic works depicting the arrival of Europeans are known as first contact paintings. They illustrate the arrival of an alien culture with its strange, exotic animals.
For the first time seeing a person riding a horse, and they've probably never ever seen this animal before, it would have been a big shock. to see that in their mind and then to go and draw it on a rock, very, very detailed, especially with this horse as well too, you know. It's just what they've seen. It's not like they've taken a photo of it and then come to the rock and copied it onto the rock. It's all in their mind.
However, this priceless heritage is being threatened by a range of enemies.
The rock art is, you know, globally significant, and it has conservation problems to do with effects of buffalo, feral animals generally, fire, vegetation that rubs against rock paintings.
On the day of our visit, we spook wild buffalo that are camped nearby.
This area here, if you walk around the corner there, you'll see there's scrub bull dung there, you know. Those big bulls, they come in here and it's a nice area, you know, nice and shady. They can have a camp here.
The hard hooves of wild cattle can destroy delicate artefacts and ancient relics left in caves like this. Buffalo like to rub their thick hides on the rock face.
In some areas, they've made barriers, fences, and put around to keep the buffalo out.
Until the 1960s, Indigenous people used the plateau as a wet season retreat, and they used fire to manage the country. The bush has grown thicker since then, and hot fires can crack and destroy rock formations and galleries.
That area in the rock country, the Arnhem Land plateau, hasn't been settled for a long time. There's a lot of build-up of fire material, and if a wildfire sweeps through some of these areas, they can burn the paintings, but it often creates such heat that the rock can explode. Just simple things like seedlings can grow into trees that rub against the paintings.
In recent years, a local group, the Waddakan Rangers, has carefully reintroduced fire here as a management tool. The Rangers play a vital role.
They're preserving the art, they're looking after the art, they're making sure the vegetation's cleared.
The reason for their existence is to manage the land, and that can vary from feral animal or feral plant control, fire burning and carbon credits, looking after rock art, just a huge amount of obligations that they have traditionally, which has been channeled into a modern concept.
Recently, with the backing of traditional owners, Peter Cook has led a campaign to highlight both the existence of Arnhem Land rock art and the challenge of preserving it. David Hancock, a professional photographer based in Darwin, has helped record the first contact art.
It's quite a wonderful slice of our history that I think many people aren't aware of. I mean, these rock art drawings meant a lot to Indigenous people, but really in the context of history, they meant a lot to us too. They're such magnificent sites, not just in the context of the art, but where they are in the plateau. Beautiful scenery, probably some of the remotest areas of the world. But the contact rock art sits beside images that date back 30-odd thousand years. So.
Recently in Melbourne, a selection of photographs of first contact art went on show. Peter Cook hopes it can tour nationally and bring awareness of these little-known treasures to a far wider audience.
We've got about 50 or 60 photographic images in this exhibition that we've been showing in Melbourne, and they represent about a dozen sites. I'm sure there are hundreds of sites with contact rock art that we've yet to find.
It's probably a situation that doesn't exist in too many places in the world, where you have Indigenous artists drawing these newcomers. You have the newcomers with extensive diaries, and you're able to collate the two. And in fact, you can probably bring them together and work out the exact precise places these explorers were and where their people were when they saw them.
One work vividly depicts the exploring party of David Lindsay.
Men smoking pipes and walking along with guns. A different artist has painted another guy sighting up along a gun there. Some kneeling figures that are stalking. And so here's a painting where we're able to say that this relates to something that happened in November 1883. And the Indigenous record and the European record line up perfectly. And that's a bit special.
Most who see these images for the first time are awestruck by what is depicted and how it is depicted.
The impression of a horse, impression of a gun, impression of the bullet, it's actually aliens coming in a contact, and these are being depicted. And probably it was the curiosity of the entire family to depict these aliens. And these aliens ultimately, they came to explore this area. And this depiction has become a national treasure today.
But the experts agree that it's the most recent art that is most at risk. Often the ochres and paint that is used in these works are simply less resilient than in the older paintings. The outlook, they say, is bleak. Recording, protecting and conserving this art is extremely expensive, and federal funding has mostly dried up.
That kind of systematic exploration, recording and then condition recording hasn't been done in Australia on a large scale, and I think that's the next frontier. Australia's been a pioneer in rock art conservation in the past, mostly because of funding programs administered by the Aboriginal Torres Strait Island Studies organisation, but that funding finished about 15 years ago, and since then there's been no consistent funding for this sort of work. So it's been bits and pieces for a very long time. An archaeologist goes and somewhere they're interested, something's falling to pieces, they get a conservator up there, but the range of challenges is huge.
These contact images have been around for 100 years. The images underlying them maybe 50, 60,000 years. So you've got to try and get a different perspective into the minds of the bureaucrats handing out the grants and looking for outcomes, that it's going to take time.
So these are all the things just that the kids have pulled out of this little section here, isn't it? Just an extraordinary range of stuff. The guy who made that really knew what he was doing.
It's a good piece.
For the traditional owners, like the Hunter family, these rock galleries are a way to reconnect with their country and their ancestors. A great deal of traditional knowledge was recorded in recent decades.
We've got people walking back on country now, you know. They're walking through their own country and they're burning, and they're finding art sites like this, and they're looking after it, they're recording it. If you look on this wall here, you know, there's kangaroos, there's barramundis, catfish and Saratoga, bream. There's a lot of food here, but it would have been pretty hard to get.
Many rock shelters also contain countless everyday objects. They also tell a story. The arrival of metal, for example, seen in iron fashioned into a spear point.
Like barbs for the spear, for the fish spearhead, and then some other rock spearheads, grinding rocks, and some bones.
There is wire which has been fashioned into fishing spears, and curious objects such as buttons.
I'd like to go through here with a metal detector and see what else is under here.
A stone tool, and they use it like for spears and for hunting stuff. Maybe somebody grabbed it and lost it, and I found it.
They tell stories of what's happened and where they've gone, what they've seen.
You get Sally May up here.
That's right.
Fred Hunter can readily imagine how his ancestors must have viewed the first Europeans, and why guns, frequently depicted, must have been such a source of wonder.
A total different thing than a spear. You got to throw a spear, and you know, they see this thing that's all they do is aim and pull the trigger and bang, something drops. That would have been a big shock, you know, and especially even seeing a bullet too. This little thing that comes out of the gun, and seeing a buffalo or something like that drop. If I was an artist back in the day, I would have probably put it on the rock, for sure.
Aboriginal people are using this to recover culture and to re-establish links with the land, because it's sitting there waiting for people to come back, black and white alike.
This is a very special place that Fred and his family have got here, because they're, you know, another telling of our history and our historical stories.
Most of the old people that talked about it, seen it when they were young, they're all passing on now. You need the younger generation getting back on country, looking after country, especially art sites like this.